eSync rear hub service. Tools needed for this service: smooth jawed pliers or an axle vise, blind bearing puller, hammer, punch, bearing press with appropriate drifts, small flat-tipped screwdriver, Freehub grease, a hub shell seal kit, and the correct bearing kits. This service should be completed with the cassette and rotor removed. Begin by pulling off the Freehub, which will naturally remove one end cap from the axle. The axle and 0.5mm spacer may remain attached to the hub shell or come off with the Freehub. Separate the end caps, axle, 0.5mm spacer, and Freehub and set them aside. Using a small flat blade screwdriver, pry the seal from the hub shell. Discard this seal, you'll be replacing it with a new one later. Next, use your shop towel to wipe out the inside of the hub. To service your Freehub, begin by removing the pawl retaining ring with a small flat blade screwdriver. Clean the Freehub, pawls, and springs with your shop towel. You may utilize a mild cleaner or solvent for heavily contaminated parts. This would be an excellent time to check your bearings, Freehub body, and axle for signs of wear. Replace any worn out parts as needed. To remove the hub shell bearings, either use a bearing puller or a long pin punch. Remove both shell bearings and the axle spacer. Clean and set the axle spacer aside. Wipe the hub shell clean with a rag and inspect for wear. Apply a thin layer of grease to the bearing bores and outer race of the new bearings. Next, using a bearing press, press the bearings into the hub shell one at a time. Bearings should be pressed in hand tight. Over-tightening of the press can result in damage to the bearings. Don't forget to reinstall the axle spacer before installing the second bearing. A similar process is used for the Freehub bearings. Continuing with the Freehub, apply fresh grease to the pawl and spring pockets. Now, install the pawls and springs followed by the pawl retainer. Be sure that the pawl retainer snaps into place and is fully seated. We'll start our hub assembly by applying a thin layer of grease to the ratchet ring. Then apply a thin film of grease to the outer circumference of the new seal and press it into the hub shell. Start at one side and finish at the other, feeding the seal into the hub shell groove. Ensure the seal is pressed in evenly. Now grease and slide the axle into the hub. Then install the disc side end cap. Slide the 0.5mm spacer and Freehub onto the axle and into the hub shell, rotating the Freehub counterclockwise as the pawls touch the seal. You may need to use your finger to keep the internal bearing spacer centered when sliding the Freehub over the axle. Lastly, install your drive side end cap. Now your hub is serviced and ready to go. Reinstall your cassette and rotor to the manufacturer's recommended specifications and reinstall the wheel in your bike.